We're live! We're live! How about that? And welcome! Welcome. Not that screen. I guess that would work. This one works too, huh? Just move down? No. No. No, where's the main? Not the main screen. Oh Lord. Well, y'all just get to look at dogs today. How about that? That's cool, right? Welcome. We are here. The dogs are fighting each other or chewing on the rug, whichever. Doesn't matter. Welcome to Grinding Gainz. Caffeinated critique. Oh. Yeah, I'm pretty faded right now. Just got done with my workout. I don't know if this mic is picking up. Do I even have a mic on this one? We do. God, it's wonderful when shit works like it's planned. All right. Completely disorganized as always this morning. But we get in there. We're getting there. I'm thinking about that. Got to do something. Need another. Open this one up. We're going to slide it over here so you don't have to see it. Please be muted. Please be muted. Yes, thank God. I gotta send a quick. Oh, get this to there. And then we take that and go right there. Cat. Here, what's this? Okay, we don't want fucking games on Reddit. Fuck off with that shit. This guy. This guy. Oh God, I don't need to yell at him. Yo. Send that to him. All right, we're here. We'll see what happens. Should have came up with like a good story to tell y'all about this morning. Blondie just over there doing Blondie things. Sparky wants to get out of here. There's some dogs yelling outside, so that's a little bit of a distraction for them, I take it. Plus, they've been locked up for a bit. We just got back from the gym, the wife and I. Alrighty, enough of that. Enough meandering. Got old Chuck Norris back up here again. Again, he may not have any pain in his life, but he's Chuck Norris, right? But you're not. So if you do have pain, if you do have any aches, pains, injuries that you're kind of dealing with, you're kind of fussing with, and you just want to look for some help, you've been to the Western medicine approaches, so to speak, you've seen your doctors, and they either have given you some advice and helping you with it, but it just doesn't seem to be clicking or gelling. As long as you're not dealing with some sort of, infection, cancers, or, something with a pathological, something like medicine has pinpointed as the issue, and you're still dealing with some pains and things of that nature, restrictions, that's what we're here. That's why we created Range Fitness. That's why we have our social media outreaches and that kind of stuff. So if you do have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to hop in the chat. Slow me down while we're going through some of these exercise reviews. Every Thursday morning is about looking at videos submitted to our subreddit. So, everybody enjoys watching me lift, or the other few sad souls I get to put up on here. But if you do have some questions about your lifts, feel free. Come in here and write it if you don't already know. It's all anonymous as far as I can tell. All right, and so you can get your silly little username, block out your face, wear a mask like some other people might do. The gin. But in any event, if you're looking for some help and assistance on your exercises or just in movement and life in general, slide on in, let us know, and we'll help you out. Without further ado, all right, let's get into it. So last week, we did talk a little bit about, common fixes for pain. Damn, shit out of my hand. Some common fixes for pain, and talked a little bit about how that's not great. I really want to have a spiel for you today, so we're just going to get right into it. I normally get pretty distracted about things anyways. So first, up on the slate today, God, my hair is just this shit right here. Where does it want to go? Can go here? Will you stay there? Stay. All right. So what we're doing here is a front rack squat. And front rack is being in this position with our elbows lifted up in front of us, shelving the weight, if you will, on the collarbones. Well, fucking phenomenal position to get into and work. And it's very difficult for a lot of people, though, to have the requisite, just to have the shoulder mobility to actually get into this position. And so if typically people are going to be challenged to get into this position, and so we'll make compensations such as maybe we just hold it by our fingertips. More commonly, the elbows drop really low. Other things you'll see are people do kind of a, I don't know, kind of a Frankenstein, or they just cross their hands over their chest to help shelve it up there and keep the weight. And then in some cases, right, people might try to do some sort of Frankenstein where they just keep their arms up. That's a little more limited. That's going to be more of a mobility, I feel, exercise and more rare. But again, I think a lot of times people just cheat, so that, if you will, and go into this internally rotated shoulder position and shelve it up here to get the, call it stimulus of having the weight on the front side of the body versus a back squat where we have the weight on the back of the body. Hence the two names, right? Front squat, back squat. Exercise. Some exercises have some really weird names. Some of them have like really just straightforward and bland names, right? So that being said, front rack squat though, I think is one of the, it's a silent, it's not silent, but it is a fucking just phenomenal tool. It is probably one of the better variations for us to attempt if we have the ability to get into that position. So let's talk about it. Let's see what we see. And we'll get going from there. Stop. I like going full screen on these, but sometimes it kind of fucks up with the stream. So I think that looks okay. All right. So first things first, right, we're getting into our setup. So on, again, front rack squat, because again, the bar's in front, it is a little awkward, I feel, to try to get under the bar and get yourself situated. Part of that's probably just being comfortable and used with the motion. So just like a back squat, I first get my hands in order, and then we organize the shoulders as best we can, even our core, and then you'll see me make this big emphatic, so to speak, drive of my elbows up, and then try to stand up. Now, I will say with an empty bar, like the tensions of the triceps and tensions of other parts of the body may feel like it's kind of pushing the bar away. Excuse me. Tired this morning. And so you want to try to give in to the bar as much as you can, so to speak. We're not really trying to fight the bar with our arms. That being said, again, depending on your mobility, this is going to be, your body's may not be quite ready for that. We'll talk about that if we get to it. So here again, we're getting we need a lot of external rotation from our shoulders, right? And so, whoa, there you go. Now you know which subreddits I follow, huh? All the bestest. Let's see here. Get my new toy out. We bought it, we got to use it. We got to find every reason to use it, huh? There we go, semi-center. Semi-centered. And then we got to unplug the Xbox controller, John. And then we got to plug in the fancy toy. Only got so many USBs. What'd you call me? All right. So what we're going to work here is in getting into our front rack position requires our shoulders to really have to sit back. All right. We got to get these shoulder blades to sit down and kind of scoop around us. So that way we can tilt these elbows upwards. Now, can I, what do I fucking? Well, I thought I had said that, but I didn't. All right, and so the other thing you'll see here, right, this bar is like coming right across the front side of the body here. And so a lot of times people feel like this bar will hit them in the throat. And if you've been listening to some of the streams with me times past, one of the things I really have to work on is making sure I keep my dome pulling backwards. Keeping my head feels weird, right? But you can look at our ears, your ears relative to your shoulders, right? We're trying to get them at least stacked on top of each other, if not just maybe a small behind. Especially on this front rack squat, so you're not choking yourself. And so again, as we get these shoulder blades to pinch together in the back here, we're also really focusing on that depression. And I even think a little bit of that scooping of the shoulder blades kind of around our body. And then we create this big shelf across our collarbone, across our delts, the collarbone, and then it's just sits there. And then we're ready to rock and roll. So once we're there, again, the entire time we're here, come on, snip it. Snip it. I always think of skip it. Skip it. All right, phone, we gotta turn you down. You're making too much noise. Everybody's starting their streams this morning. What is this? Oh, Lord. Just want a picture. There we go. We just want the picture. And then let's not try to make it too damn irritating for y'all and having movement in the back while we have a still picture. All right. And so again, we can see the setup here. Right. The shoulders are a little forward, but then again, that's going to a little bit happen, but we're still trying to keep tension as much as we can back in the back between the shoulder blades, even though we're having to create a little bit of, we're not getting that full extension of the spine, so to speak. Trying to get that little bit of, how am I saying this? We don't want to completely protract our shoulders. We don't want to be caved in the chest, all right? We don't want to create this big U shape to try to create this shelf. We need to still keep the shoulders peeled back some. Right? And there's going to be other little areas that become very difficult in this position for a lot of people because we don't experience, or we don't have a lot of experience working in these positions. And so all that to be said, and we can see the bar sitting on the shoulders right about here. And we're keeping the ears, that was a terrible line. Keeping the ears over the shoulders, roughly over the hips, right? So again, stacking of our joints as we set up. And then the game is going to be keeping these elbows as high up as we can. And this is a couple of reasons, right? The more those elbows drop down, now it becomes more of a arm exercise, right? Trying to keep the weight from going away from us. But again, we really want to keep that driving up and out. This helps us again get into a nice long lat position, which a lot of us are lacking. Right? It is going to again recruit some delts. Those front delts are going to have to be cooking to keep the elbows up. You know, we're still trying to keep the weight rested on the body. So it shouldn't be so much a delta exercise. I mean, not to say that they won't be engaged, right? But we're not really trying to recruit them. And then the fun part of this is, like every other squat we've ever talked about, we want to keep this bar over the midline of the foot, right? So as we go through this squat, that's what we're going to be watching for. One of the things, right? I don't know if I made any sense with any of that. So let's just watch the video. We got our rack. We're stepping back 1 foot, 2 foot. Everything's the same as a back squat. Check your feet. Then we get a hip hinge, and we're going to bend the knees. And this is the challenging part, right? As we're getting down into this position, typically, right, we'll work on, as we hip hinge, we will allow our shoulders to move with the hips, as it were, and we would keep maybe that 90 degrees or something at your armpit. But in here, we've got to keep those elbows up, 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 up. And as we get down, it's going to be a challenge to keep them up. Right, this demands a lot of thoracic extension to be able to maintain that upright position without us caving in and whatnot. And so again, if we check in ourselves again, it's not maybe the most square. Oh, we're not drawing. Let's not do that. Let's get to this. All right. So as we're in the bottom of this position again, let's see again. We have the bar roughly here. Will it make it a line? Can you turn into a line for me? There it is. Not a very thick line, but you know, you work with what you got. And so again, we can see again, we're keeping the bars roughly over that midline of the foot. So that's excellent in that regards. And so we want to keep that cooking for us. And if you think, imagine if we start dropping the elbows down, that's also going to tend to let that bar tilt forward in front of us. And if we're letting that bar go forward, if this bar, not you. If we let this bar go forward at all, well, now our center of mass is going to be changing. This is going to also alter how our body is going to have to recruit, so if you will, to get back into position or just to get ourselves back up. And so again, if we can make it all about keeping those elbows and keeping these elbows up as high as we can during the lift, we'll really set ourselves up to get into this bottom position well. Now, other things we want to keep in mind with any squat, all right, it's going to be this space between our shoulders and our hips. Give me a line. Make it a line. Yeah. Dog just farted. Bastards. Now we're going to try again, always have the spine in a nice neutral place. And so where a lot of people have issues in any squat, front squat, back squat, bodyweight squat, whatever, is we end up creating a butt wink. Right? And so how do you know a butt wink's occurring is you'll see a rounding to the low back. Right? And so here we can still see, we can still have try to draw this as best we can. So a spine has, was it 3 curves? You got our C curve in the neck, and you have your S curve from the thoracic into the lumbar. You always hear people talking about you want to keep a straight spine. Bit of a misnomer. Not quite the truth. Spine health. Let's look at this real quick, because I can't draw spines for fuck. Oh yeah, we're already in the window, John. You can't open a new window. Let's see here. Spine anatomy. There we go. Bop. All right. We'll swing this one in. So good old Google. Just looked up spine anatomy. It will teach me anatomy is going to be who we steal this from today. This is actually a really good representation. I like it. All right, so here we can see a spine. All right, so again, we were talking about, we got our C curve spine here. You can't see what I'm drawing because it's the same color. And then they have what is referred to as the S curve. the thoracic into the lumbar and sacrum. If I could draw straight with this little pad, it would look like an S. But you can see it there. Now, in deadlifts and things, we'll talk about that here in a moment. Deadlifts, you get a lot of back and forth on what happens between this portion of your spine. At least that should be the conversation that's happening. So our thoracic spines are very, very mobile. They have a lot of movement that can happen there, specifically within what's called flexion, so bending, bringing it closer, and extension. All right. And so have you ever thought about, like, when you carry like a big heavy box or something just kind of oblong, right? We have to create this, what will be people will refer to as global flexion or global extension. Remember, the whole body is having to create this flexion. And then we also create this extension as well. Like, so if you're trying to lift it up overhead, we'll create a little extension through our upper back. The caveat is this lumbar. Right in here. This is where butt winking occurs. This in the sacrum, right? But really, this is where the butt wink occurs. And so, while the thoracic portion is great for us to have movement through, our lumbar, we really want to keep it fairly rigid. And we can also see here, right, it's already kind of in a pre-extended position. And there is some movement that can occur through it, but otherwise it's pretty rigid, and we want to maintain that rigidness. And so this is also where we can talk about core engagement, and we would create stability through our midsection and proper core engagement such that we eliminate movement through that lumbar. And truly, right, we limit unwanted movement through the thoracic as well. Key word being there, unwanted, right? If we can elect, that's a different thing, especially for the thoracic. Lumbar, again, we don't really want to challenge that lumbar too much. It's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but it's not really designed, if you will. Its structure is not really there to create a lot of, again, there's not a lot of place for it to extend, right? We overextend into our lumbar. That's where we start feeling a lot of pinchiness potentially. You'll again get bone on bone, and there's not as much clearance, I think, between those facets, the spaces between the ribs, these little teeth-looking thing here, the facets. So we don't want to over-challenge that lumbar, especially with weights. And then again, you can see here, because of its disposition to already be in this kind of C position or the bottom of the S curve, there's not really a lot of space for it to round out. Can it round out? Yes. Everything can be kind of forced in that way, but over time that's going to create a posture deviation for us as well. And so we don't want to eliminate our lumbar curve or that bottom C curve. And then again, the sacrum, the coccyx, right? They're just, so your sacrum is again more of an anchor point. It's called your SI joint, your sacrum, iliacus, hips, iliacs. So our sacrum and all that, this area is really, while there's some movement that occurs out here and out here, again, the sacrum and what have you, really, we don't have a lot of movement through there. And so again, when we create a butt wink, that is basically us rounding out our lumbar. And there's different reasons this could happen. We won't get too far into it, but at the end of it, it's just core control. Not having good core control, having mobility issues, and then sacrificing the integrity of our spine to achieve some position. Now, a hobby of mine is jiu-jitsu. Dust up here. A hobby of mine is jiu-jitsu, right? So grappling, rolling around, and what have you. And very commonly, like, you'll get twisted and smashed into all kinds of different places. We want to have the ability to, again, have our body get contorted in sorts of ways. It's when we're under load and we're training movement, and we really want to be true to kind of these structures abilities and what these structures are kind of, again, I just wonky, but designed for. And so with that all being said, when we're squatting, deadlifting, whatever, oh, well, that was kind of cool. I didn't mean for it to go with that, but when we're doing any type of load-bearing efforts to the spine, it's always going to be best to keep it in that neutral position. I think I've beaten that horse enough to death. So a squat's a squat's a squat. Front rack squat, back squat, high bar squat, low bar squat. There's some variations. Goblet squat. Right? They're going to have some variations in them. But at the end of the day, it's the same movement pattern, y'all. It's the same movement pattern. Hip hinge, knees bend. Let's see here. Yeah. So all in all, squats here is looking pretty decent. What I'm seeing is maybe the elbows dropping a little bit. So if we restart this, let's see from the first rep to the last rep. And I won't interrupt as much. My coffee's cold. Hip hinge, and we're lowering, going down the elevator, pause. And so like, again, I'm always looking for using, oh no, possible band evader, not cool experimental population. We don't want cheap viewers. We want high value viewers. People that understand that, you know, cheapness is reflective of the product. So I'm now going to have to take time out of my stream to like ban you. And I hate doing this shit because I can never do it. I have to go like, I think I can do it through Twitch. God, I hate this fucking stream boo crap. Oh me, oh my. Let's see here. Stream manager. Let's get to it. Chat. Experimental population. We're going to ban. There we go. And then what else can we do? We're going to report because, you know, I'm a Karen. Let's see. Spamming. We don't want spam. Spam. Let's see. What y'all's crap called? Stream boo. There we go. Block this user. We're gonna block this user and block this user. All right. Well, now that we've taken care of that fun, let's get back into it. It's hell being a fucking adult some days. All right. That's bugging. Twitch. Thank you, Twitch. Getting on top of those. All right. So again, when I'm looking at anybody's squat, my own squat, client squat, get into this kind of argument. We are not robots. And you're right, we're not robots. We should, again, we have all these different movements, the tissues, we can have amazing healing properties, fun stuff. However, when again we're exercising, I think of it just like taking it back to middle school, high school math class. Like you do math exercises. And if you did every math problem differently, like you'd probably have a hard time actually learning the subject matter and getting better at it. And so every problem, you solve it in the same manner. You use the same principles, you follow the same structures, you get the idea. So when we're physically exercising, when we're doing physical exercises, just like if you've done sports, team sports, or even individual sports, there are specific steps and building blocks that we get established so that way we can execute it precisely every time. I came from football and track. So in football, right, we used to have this hose fire hose. I don't know where the fuck they got it from, but we used to have this fire hose. Come here, Paint. We need you. Help me, Paint. You're my only hope. Go. Let's do. I think a brush would be good to start this out with. Let's see how this works. Whoa. That's not a brush, y'all. Brush. So let's just imagine that's a fire hose, right? Work with me. And so what the coaches would do is they had it painted in a way so that like that would be the center. It's been so long since I played. I think this would be what we call the guard. And then this you'd have painted on, and that was your tackle. And you have it on the same side. Just different positions of the line, your basic line. And so then as running backs and as a part of the running backs and the quarterbacks, right, we would practice the running drills. We would practice the running game. And so the quarterback, right, we would know that, hey, the quarterback would have to go 1 step, 2 step, hand the ball off, while the fullback would be coming up in through here. And it was like, if you went a little too far wide, right? If you're the running back and you kind of just ran, God bless John. Yeah. If you ran wide and ran over this guy, in theory, right, in the game, you're going to run into your own teammate. Like if you're the quarterback and you just took 1 step and you're waiting on that fullback to get there, well, that could cause problems in a game because the center could get pushed into you and knock you back, right? And so in a very controlled setting, everybody works on knowing where they need to be, and we rehearse it. And pole vault. So we'll use the same thing, so I don't have to redraw it. Just imagine we're looking down from the sky. When I pole vaulted, loosely, we'll say the pit was over here on this side. All right, there's this thing called the box, and then we have the pit. We'll color it in differently just so we can see it. All right, and so then the pit's the big thing that you jump into so you don't like die. It's the big foam mat thing that everybody just loved jumping and playing in. And so what I would have to do for every practice when I was rehearsing this stuff was I would have to take my pole and I would stick it in the box. And let's say the pole would have me maybe out to here. So my little happy ass, like maybe standing right about here. And so I would have to mark that. Right, we'd put a little marker, a little tennis ball or something on the ground. And then what I would do then is turn around, have my pole, and then I did what was called a 3 count. So it was basically a 3 to 4. I think I know we'll figure it out here together because it's been a while. But I'd have my position, and then instead of approaching the pit, I would actually run away from the pit. And so I'd be having my setup, and then when I was ready, it'd be my first step would be and 3 and 2 and 1 and flip and pop, right? So 3 and 2 and 1 and flip and pop. So about five steps, which would mean that we saw green. So we go maybe 3, 2, 1, flip, and then pop. All right, so then I'd have a marker somewhere about here. And then I could go from that side in and then start practicing and making little adjustments so that way we get into it. And then I would do that for half a practice without even having something to jump over, especially when I was starting out. Because again, once you get the basics down, then you can execute the other things. Then you have something to build off of, right? It's everywhere. It's not just, again, in any one place, right? And so coming back into exercise, the reason I harp on form and technique and practicing every rep to make them look as perfect as the first rep is over time, these develop habits. These develop what our posture turns into, right? This is what can lead us into having pain and discomfort. We can keep our, I still have the drawing of, no, we don't have that still, but we'll do it real quick. Let's go spine with nerves. All right. This is good. We'll use this one. And so underneath the skin, deep, and then in the muscles, underneath the muscles. Now, specifically with our spine, our vertebrae. Right, so behind here, all these little yellow stuff, and I'm assuming this blue, dark blue and red, that might be blood supply. It probably makes more sense that's blood supply, but it could be nerves. I'm not sure based on the drawing. Fine. Nerves are typically denoted by yellow. That's why we're going off of that. So we see these nerves, and they're all here, right? You can see how, let's see the mouse cursor. Yeah, you can see all the nerves coming back in through here. And nerves are the highway that are, you tell something to move, it comes from your brain, goes through the nerve system to that muscle, makes a contraction, that little electrical signal, vice versa, right? You stub your toe, basically your nerve endings get flared up and they send that signal up to your brain and your brain goes, ow. Kind of a cool phenomenon. If you ever notice, like if you've ever hit your thumb with a hammer or if you stubbed your toe or something of that nature, 95% of humans instinctively will just start moving it, because what ends up happening is our nervous system is it's a one lane road. You have pain coming up from the site to the brain, but if you override the pain signal coming up and you tell it to move, the movement signal comes down and kind of interferes with that pain signal. And if you do it kind of for long enough, right, the severity of the pain will dissipate as whatever happens dies off, as it were. That doesn't mean like it fixes the pain. It just means that it gets you to where you can catch your breath and you ain't seeing red no more. Now, in our back and our spine, like this is the lumbar, right? So what ends up happening for a lot of people is, whether it's they damage a disc somehow, or it could be just the pressing. Now you can see how we got the solid yellow here, and then kind of disappears, and then you see the yellow under here. So they're going in and out of these areas. So if you imagine, like you just like gently pinch your finger or something, like you can feel that pretty good. Well, now think about your body weight just slamming down on one of these suckers. Or let's say over time, we're resting in a position such that we're leaning on them for a long periods of time. This is kind of what happens when we have limbs fall asleep. But instead of being able to just move out of that position and getting that blood circulation back and letting that nerve impingement up, right? It's becomes a chronic thing, and then that can leads into worse and worse stuff. And so if we can get to this place where we have a habit of allowing all of this stuff to have its space, when we have a habit that we develop where we have our muscles working as one to create stability around there, versus us using structure stability, as I refer to it, right? If we're allowing our bones to kind of sit on each other or take some of the pressures off of the muscles, I mean, there's something in between there. And over time, that's how we get that things like spinal stenosis and what have you, is the nerves are no longer able to slide freely. They're being pinched down on, and then we have narrowing of these areas for various reasons. And so again, the more we can practice keeping our bodies in these neutral positions, right, like this one right here, it's kind of a cool one if nothing else. Wikipedia, you're so awesome. Oh, kind of, right. But right, the more we can keep these structures in their neutral positions, the less issues we will have. And so that's why, again, I'm always a big proponent of learning how to put ourselves, organize our spine and our bodies in neutral positions. And then when we train them as close to those neutral positions as we can. Again, it's not to say that we shouldn't reach really, really far and collapse into the chest. Right? If you got to reach for something, you got to reach for something. That's why we have that. However, when we start making that the habit, then we start rounding our back and we have this kind of hunched back effort. You'll see again, we collapse in the chest. Your head will probably likely dip forward or drop down a lot as well, which then ends up creating a lot of length in through areas and causing us stresses. All right, enough preaching. So let's see how well we can keep this moving. Go back to full screen on this one. So as I'm watching a squat, again, are we first off keeping this spine in a good neutral alignment? And then are other portions of it staying consistent? Our knees, our feet, all those kinds of things staying in the same place, or are we starting to see a lot of differentiations? And so as I'm feeling, let's see, as we get lower. That's not what I wanted. That one's a good one. And hip hinge. So that one I didn't feel as much, I didn't see as much of a hip hinge. So, but still not terrible. There's a good hip hinge. Yeah. And so when we get down into these positions, right, we're having to express a lot of mobility into our hips and glutes by getting to this kind of ass to grass position I'm working. But you notice, again, I'm using a very light load. Again, the greater the mobility range we're expressing, the less load we're going to be able to work with. And that's why you see people who lift too heavy weights don't have a lot of range of motion. I'm not saying that people who lift high weights don't use good motion. But when you see kind of the ego lifters on workout fails, that's why they have comically, it's not why, but when we have just absurd amounts of weights on there that are over challenging for our body, we can't express these deep ranges. Now for me, again, I'm really wanting to explore these. I don't do a lot of front rack squats. And so because of that, that's one reason why I'm doing this lighter load. I'm using the 45-pound bar, I'm just using the bar. And the other thing part of this too is, again, I've been working and struggling with some shoulder mobility issues. So that's another reason why I want to keep the load not as high intensity. So that way I can maintain integrity of my shoulders. You see my head popped over there. Maintain the integrity of my shoulders as I work into the position. Now, looking about squats, right? Good landmark for our squats is going to be our spine relative to our shins. Pop. And so I always like to have this sense. It looks like, I feel like we could probably get a little more ankle flexion here. Right. Seeing our shin at whatever angle that may or may not be. And then trying to have our upper torso roughly parallel. And this is going to be a good landmark, a nice way to kind of maybe simplify the thought process of what's going on during a squat. It's also a really good, easy way to kind of just self-check or see how a squat's going for yourself or for another if you're coaching. Now, as we do stop here, feel like maybe my elbows are falling a bit down, right? So again, that's going to be something to really keep in mind, is trying to get constantly driving these elbows up, 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 up. Not letting them drop down. Right? And I mean, it's taxing, it gets tiring, and that's why we do these things, right? So we develop the strength and the endurance and the positions, these little details that we can hammer out. And so again, if you're squatting, yes, there is a shit ton. Like, you go out to any fitness forum, and all they care about is where this joint is right here relative to this joint. For a competition, sure. If you're working for some powerlifting meet, or you're doing some sort of lifting competition, right? There's, and I don't really pay attention to a lot of these things because it's just not my cup of tea. But a lot of people are worried about trying to get their hip crease at or below their knee. And I think this is a good landmark goal for people. I think it's a good, not watermark, but it's a good barometer of our joint health and our abilities. But if you can't squat body weight, if you can't squat your body weight to this position, putting weight on your back to force you down into that position isn't the way to do it. And likely you're not going to be able to do it. And if you are, you're not going to be able to really get yourself out in a very clean manner. So earlier I was talking about, we're not robots, but I train like I am a robot. I want to have this sense that every rep is the same. So that if I were to, maybe not from here, but if we were to look at this picture, let's see, well, let's get to the bottom here. So snippet here, and then we're going to get to the last rep. So we'll just hide this one over there. And so while we want the first rep to look like the last rep, we want to go down and up the same way. Now, you're using hip flexors to get yourself down there, and hamstrings a little bit, and then you're using, again, glutes, hamstrings, and quads really to get yourself up. But we still have to allow ourselves down into these positions. We still have to be able to get into them, as it were. Well, we might have tilted forward a little bit there. I think we got one more here. All right. Whoa. I don't need a red line. I need a. Recommended over here. Nope, not that one. Lazy dogs. All right. All right. Roughly, what was that about? Where? Does that look about even? Even enough. All right. Now, first off the jump, right, we can see that the hips are, this first rep, my hips are a little bit higher up. And it's going to be expected. So part of this too is, again, as we warm up into the body and we warm up into the sets, we may be able to express deeper and broader ranges of motion. And that's why we're doing this. That's why I do it. But if we look, though, at these relationships we're talking about, shoulders and our shins, and shoulders. Oh, I can't draw on this one. Forgot that. All right, but they're going to be about the same. And then again, on the way down, we're going to be the same way back up. We don't want to shift too far forward, too far back on either one of those phases. Fucking exhausted. And so again, those are kind of little things I'm going to be focusing on and looking for when I'm working with a client on a squat is, again, where are we having these little asymmetries? Now, unfortunately, with cameras, right, it can only get fixed with one angle. But if you watch me working with a client, I'm walking all around them, trying to see these different angles. So let's move on. Raise into calves. So calf raises are one of these ones I feel get kind of bastardized a lot. Calves can take a lot of damage in some regards, but a lot of people I feel just kind of bounce on them. And there might be some points for that, like maybe they're working some explosion and power. But too often I feel people don't get their heels deep and low enough here. And even as I'm saying this, I feel like I could probably try to work to get my heels a little lower. But we want to, again, try to get as much length into the muscle as we can and not train it in abbreviated positions. There's a lot of talk about lengthened partials, or you hear a lot of people complaining about partial reps. And if we're doing lengthened partials, man, I think you're doing right. Lengthened partials are going to be the way we really stave off injury, and it's the way we're going to really build up strength that you're like plateauing or you're having a sticking point, right? Those are going to be the things that really set you apart and create a good, solid overall body connection. So let's go back to these real quick. So again, on calf raises, on these specifically, I'm not in a straight knee position. So I'm getting into the calf raise in the machine, but then I'm intentionally bending my knees forward. And so this hits a different muscle in the calf versus, I mean, we have two main muscles in the calf. So we have what's called your soleus, which is the one I'm after in this one, and then the gastrocnemius, which are another calf muscle. And so here again, my knees are bent. I'm still trying to get my heels as low as possible. And then as I'm pressing, I'm really trying to drive and try to think about getting that calf extension or that calf contraction or that ankle extension here at the top. You can see that we have some differences left to right. Looks like my right leg might be pushing harder potentially. Let's see, we'll pause on this next one. And so we kind of look left to right. One, we can see this right heel kind of rotating and blowing out to the side a little bit. And then this left one doesn't seem to be maybe going up quite as high. Both feet I can see, right, we're rounding outwards. And so for me, I really need to and I want to work on pressing through my big toe joint more so. Trying to keep the edge of my foot flat as I lift up, as I work my calf. Now for me, I got bunions, right? All right, so I got this on both feet, this big ass hunk of bone buildup, because once upon a time, you kind of still see it as my feet collapse inward, right? You see how that big toe likes to just be there, and I got to work on, and I should do more of it, but it's hell. So working on splaying the toes. That's why I wear my silly shoes, my little zero heel lift shoes, my wide toe box shoes. So that way, again, it allows my feet to sit flatter. Now, part of this also goes into my own little muscle imbalances. Need a new one. And so because part of this issue for me, one is again glutes. You can see that with the foot rolling over to some degree, but the muscle responsible for that bunion issue starts somewhere in here. Let's see, he comes up the bottom of the foot, rounds on the outside of the calf, goes around, and it slides all the way up here. The flexor hallucis longus. God, whoever came up with these muscle names, man, they just had too much fun. Goddamn Greeks, Latins, the Latin folk. And so again, this is one of those things, again, why I'm really trying to emphasize keeping a nice flat foot, so that way I can keep this guy as long as in a as lengthened position despite contracting, right? Versus the over contracting and then kind of pulling me elsewhere. And that's a little bit what I feel is happening here. And so keeping that a little bit flatter will help that lengthen out a little bit more, right? I know it's kind of, we gotta use our mind's eye a little bit and imagination. But if you can think about, again, if my heel on this side was just a smidge lower, that would then mean that this line would also have to be a little bit longer. And that would then challenge that tissue in a different manner and helping it stay in a more appropriate lengthened position versus adopting a position of brevity. And then you can do different types of calf raises. Right, you can see even too here when we get to the bottom. Pause. All right, we can see here how my left heel is a little lower than this right heel. So again, something is indicating that maybe I've got a little bit more tightness in this right calf than my left calf. And so there's going to be these are going to be things that I need to take note of and try to address either outside of my workouts with doing a little bit of calf stretches, being mindful of it during my workouts. So when I'm squatting, deadlifting, do I have active feet? Am I rolling? Is my knee bending forward enough? Again, for you, if you're not having pain with it and it's not bothering you, right? Keep on going. But I always say is if you notice it, you can still do something about it. Try to. Otherwise, it's just, again, I always go back to car analogies. But if you notice your car kind of wheel shaking, especially maybe like 20 or 30 miles an hour, and then it goes away, and then it comes back around about that 40 to 60 or something like that, depending on whatever, right? Your tires are unbalanced. It's not the end of the world, but you're having these vibrations come through the car, and that's when can lead to alignment issues, and that can lead to breakdown of steering mechanics. And then you end up having, instead of just going in for a balance, which costs you, $10, $15 for the dude to just put it on the machine, spin it, put the weight on, and out you go. All right, they got to take the tire off, get you a new tire because the tire's worn out improperly. Then they're going to have to go underneath, change out your control arms, your upper control, or maybe your lower control, who knows. Maybe there's some other things that end up having to get done. Then they got to go through the alignment process. And so what could have been saved by $5, $10, $15 ends up being as much as $1,000, right? Man, back when I worked in the tire shop, see that shit all the time. I'm still bad about it. Still hate going to the fucking tire shop. Motherfuckers always trying to take money from you. So all that to be said, all right, if you start noticing just these minor inconsistencies left to right, why not do something about it? Why not just bring a little awareness to it? Doesn't mean you got to turf your entire workout. Doesn't mean you got to throw it all out and start from scratch. It just means you need a little more attention. Yep, that was fun. And I had so much fun, I decided to do hamstring bridges. And so here again, whoa. So going into hamstring bridges twofold. Hamstring and calves do work together, right? I think we talked about this last time. So our calves and our hamstrings, yeah, this is the picture. Our calves and our hamstrings have a very, let's go to the site. take me to the other side. Where is it? Oh, very tiny picture. Okay, so our gastrocs, specifically our gastrocs. Gastric nemesis. Man, when I was studying to become a personal trainer, this one was just, this word gastrocnemius just tripped me out. All right, so we can see here again, we talked about this before. We have our hamstrings up here, right? I'm not drawing. So we have our hamstrings up here. You have this thing that's referred to as like your common tendon. It's got several muscles leading into that same thing. But we can see again the hamstrings are going down past our knee joint. And then the gastrocnemiuses, right? We see them here at the bottom, and they go just above the knee joint. So they connect down at underneath the heel. And so we can see when we squeeze, they will activate and point the toe a little bit. So let's do this real quick with y'all. All right, so again, and then let me say this right. There it is. All right. So the origin is at the femur, good. And the assertion is the calcaneus. And then origin pulls to, I think that's backwards. It tracks the insertion is pulled towards the origin. There we go. So the origin is like our anchor spot. Now we come back into here. All right, so this is the anchor. So what that means is when the muscle contracts, it's pulling this way. And when it pulls this way, it's pulling on the heel of our foot. Thus, it's going to let the toe drop, right? It'll point our toe towards the ground. Now, let's say we resist that. We flex our ankle, but we bend our knee. And we still try to, we flex our ankle, but then we pull through here. Well, if that heel isn't going to move anymore, then it's going to end up happening. It's going to feel like we're pulling our body towards the heel, or we're dragging the heel towards the body, as it were. Oh, indigestion. And so we can create a little bit of knee bend or knee flexion within our because of that calf. And now we say these the same principles. Your hamstrings, you know, their origins are going to be up near your ass, your sit bones and what have you. And so that's where they're going to be pulling from. And so when these guys pull, they're going to be pulling kind of that same vector upwards towards their origins. That you can see here how that would pull the lower leg back and thus bend the knee. So all that to be said, right, in this variation of a hamstring or of a extension exercise, and I'm focusing on still getting my hips to extend. Let's see, can we go full screen? Trying to make sweet, sweet love to the ceiling. But we see that little bit of adjustment here, right? Watching down at the knees and the legs, like I pull. A little pull right there, puts some breadth, shortens into the calves a little bit, but it also again gets the hamstrings engaged some. And then driving with that same sense. And so it's almost like I'm trying to pull my heels towards my butt, which is what's actually driving me upwards. Does this get some glutes involvement? A little bit. Well, spasm there. But it's going to recruit a lot of hamstring. It's going to really make my hamstrings have to do the work, as it were, versus all glutes. So in my mind, intrinsically, again, I have a little bit of a drag of my heels towards my backside. And then from there, I'm pressing down into the ground to help elevate the hips. If you've never done these before, yeah, approach with caution. Many people have already shortened calves. They have calves that are already in a chronically shortened or abbreviated position. And then many people have very weak hamstrings. And on top of that, they very likely have very tight quads. And all that means is, so we'll do another quick drawing here. That's interesting too. You can see the difference in my 2-foot position, my right calf, left one. Anyways, so as we're in this one, right, if we have, let's go with right colors. And so if I have excess tightness up here in the quads are a muscle to straighten the knee. And let's say this is also really, really short as well. This puts a lot of demand into the hamstring. So what's the hamstring is now having to, it's not getting as much assistance from the calf as it could. And it's having to fight harder against this guy up here, your quads. And so if that's the case, right, you'll end up getting spasms or cramps, kind of Charlie horse efforts. Don't lean into those. Don't over challenge those. That's how we create bad times for ourselves. And it's not to say spasms or cramps don't occur due to electrolyte imbalances or other, body chemistry issues. But when it's performative in this manner, the opinion I take is that we are over challenging that muscle in a variety of ways. And so again, in this one, it could be that the calves are not participating as much as they could be to help ease some of the load. But they're also, again, if we have tightness in the calves or the quads, that we're challenging into it as well. And the other side of it is, again, we could just be really taxed and we're out of certain electrolytes, like magnesium or something of that nature. That's even your sodium levels can be low, and that could cause spasms. But those are going to be typically like you got done with your exercise, you're walking around, and then it kind of seizes up on you. Or if you're kind of in a rest position and then it seizes up, those are going to be those kinds of things, I feel. Versus this kind of, again, performative. And so if that happens, you see me stretch it out. I think it's this next one we can see. Do what feels right for it. This is one of those kinds of, when you feel the spasm or whatnot, stretch out the calf, stretch out the hamstring so that way we don't lock up. All right. I realize today is just the John Burns show today. I don't think I put any of my other people's on here today. All right, so this is coming into today's workout. This is partially, I'm so freaking tired. So right here, I'm working as a single leg step down. And so this is one of my favorites to use as a warm-up. It's a great exercise also. Like, don't get me wrong, you'll get a lot of hypertrophy, you'll get a lot of strength gains, whatever you're freaking looking for. This is a great exercise. Pretty much, honestly, I think anything single-legged, I need to do more single-legged efforts. I feel I should get more of my clients to do single-legged efforts. This is one of those easy to sleep on concepts within fitness. And part of it is like when we do, this is 5 minutes of me doing 20 reps, right? It's a long fucking time. And so single leg stuff, single arm stuff is always difficult in that regards. Now you'll see is like you'll see me doing chest presses or overhead presses, and I'm using dumbbells. And so in those regards, right, each arm is getting to work independent. So that kind of takes care of itself, right? You don't necessarily have to do loaded one arm, loaded other arm. It's a fun variety. It's a good way to change things up. I've done it. Good core engagement. But here again, challenging the leg using the entire, you know, mass of our body and challenging it. So as I said, this was probably around 3:45 this morning. Not to brag. Just had to get it in and get done today before the stream. It's all for y'all. But you see here, if we look at the first rep, where's the first rep? There we go. For my first rep. Again, this is the max load I can really challenge myself in this moment. As I get deeper, you're going to notice my back leg is on the ground some to help take off some of the load. And then I'm using my arms as well to help stabilize. It ain't cheating, y'all. Help yourself get the most out of the exercise. If you're up there and hanging 10 on these things, all you're doing is, you know, practicing compensations. You're not really trying to... You will find when you create stability from using your hands, gently helping you stay balanced, or even the back leg helping you stay balanced, you'll feel how this actually lets you load into places of the leg or whatever it may be that you're challenging in ways that you're not used to, and it's like, oh fuck. Yeah, I haven't been working those as much as I thought I was. And so as I'm working this, I'm trying every rep, maybe just a little deeper, just a little deeper, just a little deeper. Now in single leg step ups, these things live and die, in my opinion, with our heel position. So this again, when I'm looking at squats, deadlifts, any type of leg exercise, my eyes are always focused on that heel. All right, is the client, are you keeping that heel down on the ground, driving into the ground with that? All right, yeah, knees over toe guy, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, but you're not right always either. Or at least from what I've seen. We want the knee over the toe as much as we can, depending on the exercise. Romanian deadlift, different exercise. But squats and things of that nature, absolutely, we want that knee to translate over the toe as far as we can. Terrible straight line. And then I'm curving. All right. That's a great, again, landmark barometer for ankle health and such. But it's for naught if we can't keep our heel flat. Because then we're just compensating. We are bypassing, just like I was showing in those calf raises. Right? If this is really, really tight back here, right, and it's holding on all the way down underneath my heel, connecting up to here, right? The more acute my ankle is to my foot, right, the smaller this angle, the broader the other side. Right? I mean, if you think about a circle, all right, a joint, it's kind of like a circle, right? Terrible circle, John. Circle is 360 degrees. Whatever that is, whatever this angle is, right? That takes up a portion of it. So let's say that's 30 degrees. I don't know. I'm just pulling shit out of my ass on that one. Well, 360 minus 30 means 330. If I reduce this by 5 or 10 degrees, thus getting my knee more forward over my toe, in theory, right? Well, then that would go, this would go to 20, and that would be 340. which would then mean that that red tissue that I drew has to be longer. If we are unable to achieve that, right, and all we do is we're driving this knee forward, but this is rigid, well then there the heel would have to come up. And so again, it becomes a different exercise. It becomes a different focus. Again, calf raises earlier, I was intentionally bending my knee such that I could hit a different muscle, right? So again, it depends on what your focus is. But if you're just in general health and you're just trying to learn how to squat, you're just maybe learning how to, like, you know, even that, maybe you're having squat pain, like your knees hurt when you squat. That right there is probably your problem. It could be some hip issues, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people don't have this down, both conceptually and physically. Conceptually, we don't realize that we're dumping all of our weight in our toes. We don't have the proprioception or the awareness that we have shifted our body weight into the toes and not into our heels. And we don't keep the weight in our heels, again, like I've been highlighting, is because we lack the length into our calves. We likely lack the strength in our hamstrings, and we have a high dependency, a high level of unconscious biasness to using our quads. And so all of that leads to movement dysfunctions, which over time leads to pain, injury, and just not a general good time. So something like this, where we're using a controlled, we're using as much external stability to help, again, build those tissue or help get those tissues in the right areas, which all of that, again, will help us build strength in all of these ranges of motion. The other thing I'm going to say here, one of my favorite sayings, it's a long muscle is a weak muscle. A short muscle is a strong muscle, right? Right, like when someone does a bicep curl, right, we're bringing our hands in to create that squeeze. We bend at the elbow to create that squeeze, and the bigger that contraction is, the bigger it looks, and we're going to be strongest here, right? Easy muscle test. If you can do this with yourself or a friend. It's easier if you have someone there, but right, like if you hold here and then try to push your arm away, like it's going to be very difficult to push your arm away, right? But if you have your arm extended, it's going to be a lot easier to press the arm down, right? If you have your arm fully extended and then you try to put weight on there to straighten it, like even if you're trying to resist it, it's going to be hard for you not to. And it's going to be a little easier to do that kind of thing with like a partner. Be gentle if you're doing that to yourself. Don't give each other arm bars and break each other's elbows. It's my disclaimer for you. So for this exercise specifically, right, start it up early. What up, D-Gen? I don't have sound effects. I am the sound effects. How are we doing today, sir? Thank you for your one viewer. I appreciate you always, man. I saw you streaming earlier this morning. I've been noticing the early morning streams, there's not a lot of people out here on Twitch anymore. Sad days, sad days. How'd was it yoga this morning or was it a HIIT routine? He says, I'm getting my water filtered air right now, John, leave me alone. But so working into this very deep lunge position, I'm understanding that I'm in a weaker position. My body, my leg is just going to be weaker in this position. However, I'm still trying to create muscular contraction, still trying to make muscular effort from here. And because it's going to be difficult due to, again, a long muscle is a weak muscle, that's why I'm pointing at my screen like you can fucking see what I'm pointing at. But that's why my leg's on the ground here, partially. It's also why I'm having my hands here as well, partially. So the hands and the leg are helping me stay stable, so that way I can get a good drive through the foot. But I can also, again, if I'm feeling like I'm going to have to compensate, maybe I feel like I'm going to have to shoot my hips back, or maybe I'm going to do some weird twisty motion, I can then assist a little bit by pushing into this back leg. I can assist a little bit by pulling on the wall a little bit. And again, if you're going gently to explore a broader range of motion, you'll find where you kind of get to this tipping point. It's like, oh, that's too far. That's too much. I want you to always have this sense of being able to get yourself down into it, own the position, and then elect to get out. But if you're not able to, right, we have these other support casts there to help out. So find that level of challenge where you can control it up and down. And again, it looks similar or as close as the way down as it does on the way up. And hip hinge, same, squat, right? Lunge is a squat. Everything starts with a hip hinge. And then depending on the exercise, maybe we get some knee flexion. Now, other things you may be watching for, right, is even though I'm not really working on a lunge per se, I'm just trying to do some single leg work as I prepare for my deadlifts this morning. Still being mindful, are our hips staying square? Are we twisting our hips? Anything of that nature? And again, the arms against the wall really does help with noticing and sensing that. I forgot, I didn't go into my spiel about what we're doing, D-Gen. I just assumed that you and your one follower knew what the fuck's going on here. For anybody following or coming along or just opting in, thank y'all for being here. Sorry for being lost in my own thoughts. My name's John, RFO John, RangeFitnessOnline. Every Thursday morning, we go over our subreddit, my subreddit, the subreddit, a subreddit. And anybody who's put some vidges in there, I'll look over them and give you my 2 cents as a trainer who focuses on movement mechanics and exercise education in pursuit of alleviating pain or just not having pain in this grand sense of things. Alrighty, so as requested, evidently people got tired of me always videotaping my ass on deadlifts. But also I wanted to see a different perspective. Again, I've been really struggling or working on trying to keep my right scapula from swinging and such. And because of that, I've been doing a lot of videotaping from behind and trying to see my back, specifically the upper back. And so today I decided, let me go ahead and get man, it looks like I'm sitting on that fucking rack right behind me there. You want to see a magic trick? Watch this disappear. Sorry. Anyways, let's get to our deadlift. So again, on this deadlift, I'm working what's called a hook grip. So you're seeing me wrap my fingers to grab my thumb. And this does a great job of just giving me a secure grip without having to use something like straps or going into a overhand underhand grip. And pick your poison. Now, when we do overhand underhand, there is a high chance of your supinated grip, your palm facing away from you. There is a good potential that you're going to fucking blow your bicep out. When you get to heavier and heavier lifts, like it's just the body, and you're likely trained that when you're in this position, you're going to bend at the elbow. Not many people do things like this, and it helps get a rigid back. So again, you can work a supinated grip. You could do deadlifts with both hands supinated, but again, I wouldn't advise it. If you did, you're just gonna have to be really lightweight and really focus on the hip hinging and leg drive aspects of it. I would do, sub-max lifts with something like that. Now, again, the hook grip, it's a great grip. It's a pain in the ass. Very difficult to get accustomed to. However, if you're thinking about going into things like power cleans, or you're trying to do snatches, or any of those kinds of Olympic style lifts, like the goated grip is a hook grip. It's using the thumbs and the hands, or grabbing the bar with the thumbs and then wrapping the fingers over top of that. So that's that. So we're getting into a position, organizing the spine. Once I got the grip, we're going to go ahead and get everything, you know, organized. And then the first thing before we even lift, right there, I think it was there, we're going to take the slack out of the bar is the fancy term. There it is right there. You can kind of see it. Oh. And all we're doing is we're positively engaging the weights, right? If you've ever ridden a bicycle, right, you can ride your bicycle, and as long as you're pedaling, you can feel you're just moving forward. But that moment you just kind of let the flywheel take over and you're just kind of coasting, right? You can kind of slop. There's a little bit of slop between the chain and the teeth of the gear, right? And you can make that little waka 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 kind of thing. I guess if you have brakes, right, you go enough, it'll break it. If you push forward again, then you start accelerating again. So that same concept is here. We're just taking the slack out of the bar is the fancy term, but it's engaging the bar into the weights. We're not yet lifting the weight yet. We're just, again, taking away the slack. What happens to people, especially new people, is the bar's just resting there. They get their grip and they try to lift it. And the bar is only 45 pounds or so. You know, the rest of the weights are going to typically be a lot more than 45 pounds. Today, I think I was working 80 kilo or 20 and 20, so 40 kilos on the bar. So times that by 2.2, so like 80 pounds on top of the bar. Right, so just lifting the bar is 45, but then all of a sudden I'm going to have about double that weight on the bar. And so I always talk about like lifting up a Coke can that's half empty. If you got a beer can that you thought was fuller than it was, and you damn near throw that fucker through the ceiling. Same thing will happen here, except instead of running around with 12 ounces and doing it, you're doing it with 100-some pounds. And what will end up happening is you get this whiplash effect. You're very likely going to lose your technique or form, especially if you're new at it. But worst is going to be is you create a whiplash effect, and so what we want to do is take our time, get your grips, get set up, engage the bar into the weights, and then continue the lift by driving the feet into the ground. Now today I'm working my full deadlifts. Partially is this because I wanted to get some quad work in. I thought deadlifts were posterior chain, John. That's true. But again, my knees are bending, so the quads are going to have to work. And so it still gets a lot of glute and hamstring activation. My hamstrings were feeling it for sure. But I chose this variety today for myself instead of something like a Romanian deadlift, which I was working last week a little. So on deadlifting, we're inhaling down, exhaling up. I encourage you, all of y'all, I don't care if you're fucking max lifting 500 fucking pounds. How controlled can you set that fucker down? Don't cheat your lifts. Don't let gravity do the fun part for you. Resist it on the way down. Keep your technique. You're going to find that if you do that, you're going to, again, build up a lot of fucking strength. You are going to become so much stronger if you control the eccentrics. Will you get more tired? Fuck yeah. You're working harder. If you're going to do more work, you're going to get more tired, y'all. But it's going to set you up for just a damn near bulletproof body. Because you're working both those phases of the muscle. There's the contraction, the concentric contraction, and then there's the eccentric contraction. We're bringing it to us, and then we're allowing it away from us. Good old Greek and Latin. Not sure which one it is. Just going to give it to both of them. Now again, we can't see necessarily from this angle because it's straight on, but I felt really good on this set. I felt the bar was ending level every time when I'd set it down. I don't see too much twisting or rotation going on right now, not to my eye. Maybe a little asymmetry there to the left, huh? I really liked how I felt on this one, and I ended up doing, I think, about 12 or 13 reps. And so for the way I'm looking at progressive overload for myself and my clients is I use rep ranges. And I really like this sense of rep ranges in that it gives us a little bit of grace. It also allows us to either progress every like progressive overload is not purely just putting more weight on the bar. Progressive overload is either more time under tension, more volume, more reps, or more weight, right? Greater range of motion is another way to look at your progressive overloads. And so for here, I like to, again, give myself a rep range, something that's maybe about, like, typically I think of things like sets of 1 to 4, 8 to 12, 10 to 15, maybe like 20 to 30. And then depending on your performance, or my performance, will dictate if I'm going to go up in weight or down in weight. And so if we can hit over the rep count by 1 plus 1, we're going to go up 2.5%. If we can't make the rep range, we're going to go down 2.5%. So that way we can still get our reps, still get our practice, still get the numbers that we need, the important numbers, the reps. Right? Now, as I'm watching this, I think I'd like to see it from a bit of an angle. I'm not saying anything too drastic here from the square on, but again, next time I do these, I'm going to try to get more of a lateral view, maybe about a 3/4 angle kind of a thing. So real quick here on full deadlifts, we're going to get in position here. Deadlifts, a lot of times people confuse with squats, which is understandable because they're very similar. Like, I always think of them as cousins. So we have a lot of hip, and every leg exercise is about a hip flexion first, or hip hinge. And on deadlift, so we want to bend the knees slightly over the bar. A lot of times people will say such that you feel the shins touching the bar. That's a good cue. We're also, again, having everything in line with each other as well. All right, so I know, again, this is a front-on shot. But ideally, our shoulders, elbows, wrists are all in a line, and maybe the knees are just over the toes, which would, just over the bar, which would mean our knees are in line with the elbows, thus in line with the shoulders, right? Now, as I look here, the thing I'm worried about is this right shoulder. But again, shadows make it kind of hard to tell. Looking at the angles, doesn't look too terrible. I don't know why I brought that up. I lost my thought. Now from here, again, it's all about the legs. The back is active, but we really shouldn't be lifting through our back. So the back is just along for the ride. Feel the glutes in the hands. Inhale. And setting it back down. Trying to find that rhythm. It's the rhythm of the night. And so, like I said, I think I hit about 13 on this one. And so based on that, I went ahead and upped my weight for the next set. And so this one, I wanted, again, being my last set, I wanted to see what was going on with this shoulder here. As well as, again, just the general, or any twisting or rotation happening. As we fatigue and whatnot, right, we want to be really mindful of these compensations. It's easy to just kind of chuck it off. Oh, I'm just tired, and that's why it happened. Well, then if you're tired, then that's too much, right? So again, setting up. Yeah. Looking at my feet, I thought they maybe not. I feel I might need to work on a little bit external rotation of my feet a little bit. All right. Slamming the space bar to no avail. So in times past, this right scapula stuck up a lot more obvious to me. This one looks a little better today. I shifted to the left there, huh? Yeah, we're looking uneven. I can feel it. The bar I'm hearing clank differently. And so as I'm watching here, again, I feel there might be a little asymmetry to my pelvis. Looks to me maybe like my left hip might be a little lower or even rotating. Yeah. Right here, I think we can kind of see it. I'm gonna use the mouse because I have such an easier time drawing with a fucking mouse. I say that and I do this fucking Nike check mark there. Fucking A. Make a straight line. There we go. All right, so if that was a straight line right there, enhance. Enhance. All right, I can't move it. But again, I think this makes it a little bit more obvious. We go from butt cheek to butt cheek. Make a straight line. All right, we can see then I've got this little bit of a twist going on. And then we're looking up at the shoulders too. I feel like we can see this kind of hard ridge in the shirt. Over here, not as much. And then again, oh. Straight line. All right, so again, we can see I'm presenting with this little bit of rotation, favoring my left, rotating toward my right slightly, which is then raising my right hip up a little bit. So last set, a little bit more weight, and we see this occurring. And so it's easy to be like, oh no, but I didn't feel any pain, right? It was just, I'm just a little tired and dink, 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 dink. But this is where things live and die as far as injury. And fuck it, we're in here, might as well just get it right. At least that's my philosophy. Because if I go heavier and heavier, this just gets bigger and bigger. This just gets more extreme. Right, and this is when we end up getting like scaredy cat deadlifts because we don't have the core and the upper back strength. And so we just find ways of accomplishing the lift. So again, for me right here, again, this is where I think was it last week. We're gonna slide back into time. I think this was it. Yeah, so I was doing my deadlifts. Oh, this was the wrong way. So it was this one, I think. No, I'm lying. This was the one where I really felt myself twisting last week. And I'm getting same kind of little. And so then here, this is where I was doing a little bit of an assessment on myself afterwards because I was having this sensation or feeling I was over rotating. And so here I did a little bit of a rotation. Let's see. I'm trying to feel square and even in my hips. And then I rotated as much as I could, trying not to turn my head too much. I'm just trying to see how far could I go, and just trying to landmark it, using my vision relative to my body, things like that. Reset, going back into it again, and then going to the other direction. And I think I felt like I was going, this seems like I'm going further over here this time than I did the other way. And so then I use that to make my corrective exercise. And so I then over rotated, so to speak, towards my left, challenging all of the muscles there that would facilitate this, and thus inhibiting to some degree the muscles that would rotate me the other way. So I did that for maybe 20-30 seconds there, and then got back into this lift, and I felt much more square. I felt much more solid on that afterwards. And then again, towards the end of the sets, Old Faithful started presenting again. All right, that was a little, and even there you can see how that right hip rises up and that left hip kind of dropped down on me. So again, these are, you can either get reminded by it by pain, and restrictions, or again, we figure it out and we start owning it, as it were. All right, enough about the deadlift. This is another one of these lifts that I feel I need to be doing more often for myself, but it is an incline chest press. Unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly what angle of chair I'm at. I want to say it's maybe about 45, 60 to 45. And so the more upright we do in an incline, the more it's just going to recruit our delts and our upper pecs. The more down we lay, the more full chest effort it's going to be. Right, all the way to the point of like a decline chest press, right, where our hips are going to be above our shoulders. And this is what recruits more like our pec minors. Everybody's going to be much stronger in their decline press than they are in their flat bench. And their flat bench will always be greater than their incline. Excuse me. Why is that? You ain't going to be towing nothing with my little Camry or my little Corolla. But if you got, you know, a big F-350 or something like that, you can tow all kinds of shit. That's an 18-wheeler, right? You can carry all kinds of sea containers and what have you. But not my little Corolla. And so the more upright we are, the more we're recruiting our delts, which are tiny little muscles relative to your chest. Now that being said, again, the sense of my right shoulder blade, you know, doing a lot of this is good, but again, I'm trying to hit a different phase, a little bit of a different angle, challenging muscles a little that haven't probably been given as much love for it. Now that being said, if you know how to do a horizontal press and you know how to do an incline press, anything in between is all the same. And so setup is the same as a chest press. The setup is the same as an incline. We just have a little bit small variation. It's fucking right foot's different than the left foot. I hate that shit. It's okay. Doesn't matter. It's not what we're here for, damn it. So with any chest pressing efforts, right, we're always aiming for the wrist to be over the elbow. We're working to have our forearm, oh my gosh. We're working to have our forearms parallel. Right? And last and not least, we are trying to be, where is it, broad across our collarbone. Okay, that's not very even, but something like that. All right. And so I was saying and so. But what really I think gets people on this is their funny bone. You know why it's called the funny bone? It's the humerus. It's the humerus bone, so it's the funny bone. Humerus, funny bone, humerus. Anyways, bad jokes. So the funny bone, though, right? That little your elbow epicondyle thingamabobber, a little round nodule that, right? If you bang it on anything, you just want to die. What ends up happening is typically this thing is it retreats on us. It tilts backwards. And this is due to our shoulders not being able to externally rotate properly. It's due to our shoulders collapsing and going against this sense of this broadness of our chest. Right? And so as I'm standing here, right, my elbows, you can see here on this right side, if I let my elbow rotate in, I'm collapsing in through here. You can see my shirt bunching up. But if I rotate it this way, we can see how it opens and broadens some. And so that's, again, the game we're playing. Uh-oh. Bowser Big Bean Burrito. Gonna have to get you an award or something. You're probably one of our most regular attending visitors, sir. It says sun's out, guns out. We gotta show the guns. You looking for someone over here? Or do they go over here? So, and to be able to get your suns out and guns out, right, the more we can create that external rotation, right, the bigger and broader you're going to be able to present yourself. But even more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, is we're going to be able to, again, create a stable joint, thus a strong platform for us to press on. Therefore, we can build those muscles to be as big and as strong as we'd like them to be. And so during any type of pressing, chest press, overhead press, really thinking about tilting the elbows a little bit into the spaces in front of them, right? It doesn't have to be very extreme. If you've done any type of mixed martial arts or like jiu-jitsu, we're not doing an Americana on ourselves, right? However, it may kind of feel that way. But we just want to have the lightest tilt, just the little bittiest tilt of that elbow forward. Again, that helps us establish our wrist over that elbow. I got a fucking bruise right there. And so taking it into here, just this ever slightest attention to that throughout the whole press. And so again, as we're pressing, even at the top here, trying to again get our forearms as parallel as we can. Still again, creating that little tilt of the elbows through and trying to keep our chest big and broad. So that's what we'll see with you through this set. You know, in chest pressing, again, inhale, exhale. Inhale on the way down, trying to be big, broad, filling up, and then use your breath, exhaling. How you doing today, Big Bean? Hope you're living your best life today. Now you may notice how I have my feet resting on the bench here. And so a lot of times you'll find is people will not adjust the seat of the bench to help hold them up in the chair. They'll let that bench be flat, kind of like a flat bench seat, which will then create a little bit more over, and create some, again, extension through the low back, which we don't necessarily want. We want to be as stable as we can in this as we are pressing. Now the other thing too is you can't quite see it from this angle, but again, just like on overhead presses, we're not necessarily going to be in this big and wide position. We're going to be, again, somewhat in front of the body, about that 45 degrees or so. And if we think about a chest press, right, we're going to, again, let me get the camera. Right, we're going to have this a bit of a 45 degrees at our armpits a bit, and then as we press again, they come back up. And so if we're here, if we just lift our arms up, right, that's about where we're going to be for our incline presses or overhead presses as well. And so that's what I always fall back to. Like if we can learn some of these foundational movements, if we can learn how to hip hinge, if we learn how to squat and lunge, like you can do pretty much any lower body exercise based off those foundations. Whether it's a different tool or just a different modality, however. Chest press or horizontal press, vertical press, we master those. Any of the inclines or other tools that you want to try, they're going to be the same principles. Pulling, vertical pulls, horizontal pulls. One, they're just the reverses of your horizontal and vertical pushing. But again, any type of pull that you do after that, whether it's some sort of incline or decline pull, they're all going to build off the same principles. See if we see anything else here. Yeah, shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. So one thing I was kind of noticing, it looked like maybe my left chest was sitting up higher maybe, or maybe just getting more contraction. I'm not sure. But we can also, again, like I've been highlighting, my right shoulder has its own little bit of dysfunctions. And I can kind of feel, again, with the deadlift keeping me down here. Right, it's a real short lat position and such, short, and even the serratus that I'm having issues with being real short there. And so this is going to be almost the exact opposite of where it's been. And that's why I chose these for myself. To help me kind of unkink my shoulders from the deadlift And evidently I'm not liking it because I'm wiggling my toes like a madman. Now, kind of observationally, it's interesting. It feels like I'm over internally rotating on my right hip, and maybe not quite as square in the bench as I think I am. Again, small little things, not really taking away from the upper body effort, but just some things for me to maybe during setup pay a little bit of attention to, and so that way it doesn't build more and more, right? Because what will end up happening is if I don't pay attention to it ever, right, we can see that enhance. So if we think about right here, we can see how like this outer edge of my foot is further away versus this one, right? If we look at this hip, I can't draw straight. All right, so there's that hip, and then we come over here, straight line. And there's that hip. So again, we have some asymmetry going on here. So again, just being mindful of it for myself. I mean, hell, it might be just as much as just trying to push this foot into that guy a little bit more. But at the end of it, I'm not too concerned by it, but just want to be mindful of it because this could very well be where this slowly just builds more and more and more. Right? And this is all the same tensions that are in play that are causing that rotation in my deadlift. At least that's what I would argue. And earlier I was talking about, you jam your thumb or something, you wave it in the air. And this is what's kind of happening with my toes. Like I'm having a lot of discomfort and things with maybe keeping my core engaged and the chest and the shoulders and everything. And so just kind of unintentionally creating these movements in the lower body. Ideally, right, I clean that up and minimize that from happening. Try to calm down my happy feet there. Last little thought. One of the things I was kind of working on today that popped in my mind somewhat is, again, in my hand position, and this might be a little bit for more advanced lifters, but again, if you're suffering from maybe some wrist issues, like from cell phone hand, right? So what I'm doing is instead of letting my wrist fall outwards, I'm really almost like I'm thinking of like salt and pepper shakers. I'm trying to pour salt and pepper on top of myself, as it were. And what I'm noticing when I do this, one, it does give me a very big like engagement through the forearm, but I also find that it helps me with the shoulder stability, creating that external rotation effort that I really am after. And I've found that this has been helping me feel more secure with my grip during these presses as well. You'll see me still kind of floating the weights in my hands, kind of rolling them, trying to reaffirm or reestablish my grip. And a lot of that I feel is coming from letting my wrist break back too much and the pinky side collapsing. And so I'm really trying to engage a forward tilt of my knuckles and dropping the thumb towards my elbow without, again, flaring, right? It's a fixed elbow, dropping the wrist inwards. So that doesn't necessarily mean be something if you don't know how to press, I wouldn't worry about that so much. But if you're a more advanced lifter, it might be something for you to pay attention to. Spice it up to your game. So first things first on this one, I will say I'm pretty sure that the platform I put this on was crooked. So that does have a little bit to play here. However, that being said, I can still feel myself pulling unevenly. Now that being said, let's talk about pull-ups. So I'm trying to work on some full pull-ups here today. This is a apparatus called the Roman chair. I don't know why. I don't know if it even came from Italy. Who knows? But in this, we have the pull-up bar that we're using, and it has a little platform to step up in and to. Always, 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 when you're doing pull-ups, bring yourself to the handles. Try not to just be like Mr. Potato Head and your shoulders popping out of socket, right? You need to be, pull-ups, most people are already very weak in. We don't train them enough, or again, depending on your mass, right? The heavier you are, the harder it is to do pull-ups. It's just, it is what it is, right? It's just like if you put more weight on the bar, it's going to be heavier for you to push. Well, you got a heavier body, you're going to be having to use a lot more strength to pull yourself up as opposed to someone lighter. But I think that's all pretty self-evident for most people. Again, long muscle's a weak muscle. Therefore, short muscle's a strong muscle. And so again, on pull-ups, we typically are addressing our position from a weak place. But if you can get yourself higher up to the bar without actually maybe engaging everything, but just getting yourself there, engage, lock in your stable position, and then start your first rep, allowing yourself down, and then pulling back up. I also find it kind of interesting in most lifts, right? We always start with the eccentric motion, right? We're going to a squat. Right, we hit pin and allow ourselves down. I guess deadlift would be the opposite, one of the other oddballs in that regard. We start down low, and then we drive and contract up, and then allow it down. But in that same though is the sense of try to get yourself into a strong position, and then work into that lengthened position, and then continue on. And that's what you're seeing here, getting my grip together, and then just like in deadlift, I'm taking the slack out of the system, as it were. I'm using my muscles to take the load off of my feet, and then we start the lift. And so thinking overhead pulls just like overhead presses. Yeah, I apologize. I'm pretty sure the camera's crooked, but I also know that I'm not pulling squarely either based on how I was feeling. Now, same. Again, I'm using supinated grip just because it helps, again, externally rotate the shoulders. Or still, no matter if it's a conventional pull up or if you're doing a chin up, we still are going to think about that funny bone. We want to keep the funny bones rotated inward. All right, not letting them flare out. Working on keeping a nice broad chest throughout the lift. Now, other things we can be paying attention to, right, is our midsection. We want to keep our ribs from flaring. And we got to keep our pelvis drawn up. Now, as we talked earlier, right, we're not trying to round out, we're not trying to get like a butt wink or a rounding of our lumbar here. We're just trying to have tension in the stomach. We're trying to, again, tuck the pelvis from the stomach, tuck in the tailbone from the belly. And at the same time, we don't want to get too flared in the rib cage here. And this is another common issue for here because we lack shoulder mobility. Because we can't, the longer we let our arms up, the more all this stuff has to work to keep it engaged. Or if I let it go, right now I can create this movement through that area. And so again, create that, pack everything in, tight everything in, get you in that strong position, and then lengthen into it, and you'll feel that big distinct agony becomes almost more of, again, of a core exercise versus a back or lat exercise. And so getting ourselves up there, I should pause a little longer right here and then allow ourselves down. Now, a couple of thoughts on pull-ups. Very commonly, right, we will pull ourselves up and over. And when we're doing those kinds of pull-ups, we're using pec minor, we're using like upper traps maybe, but we're not getting a good connection with the lat. Right, our lats are on the backside, so it's almost like we're trying to pull, again, our sternum up to the bar, right? We're not so, people always want to get their chin over the bar, whatever. I always aim for about, mid-face. And again, we're trying to, again, reach the torso or the trunk up towards that. Now, again, like I said, this is a front view, not a side view. But you can see again, my hips come kind of a little bit closer to the bar in some ways. You want to have like a, I always think of it like a banana shape on pull-ups. You can even flex your hips, bring your knees up towards your chest. All of that will make the core have to work a lot harder and make it, again, not a better or worse exercise, just a different exercise. But again, where this is going to live and die is, are we keeping our chest big and broad? So again, we're inhaling on the way down, exhale as we pull up. And it's my right shoulder that's, again, the one that's always giving me issues. So it even looks like that might be, as I'm pulling, it may be the lagging a bit. You can see me a little bit of flare here at the bottom, even I kind of let go and get a little really distended. And that one, that feels really strongly tilted to the left. I was a little bit, I tried harder to pull through that right side a little more. But by this point, man, I was just gassed. Trying to recover. A little, I forget what they call them, little myosets. Yeah, smoked. And would you look at that? We made it to the top before 8 o'clock. So I'm not late for work. Well, y'all, that's going to be a wrap for today. D-Gen, always appreciate you stopping by. Always appreciate the raids, whether it's just yourself or any of your viewers, man. I greatly appreciate it. To all the lurkers that may have been here, again, thank y'all for being here. Big Bean Burrito, Bowser Big Bean Burrito. I know I always give you shit for the emojis, but I do always appreciate seeing them. Thank you for coming by. It's always fun to kind of see your interaction, sir. As always, I mean, this is really an open forum for anybody who is looking to have some help in whether it's just in general with the lift, or maybe they need some help with some pain or discomforts that they're having with their lifts. If that's you, if it fits you in any way, I know I'm doing a lot of bodybuilding kind of things, and I'm showing a lot of weightlifting exercises. You know, even if you're a yoga person and you have some questions about your yoga poses, let me know. I can still help you out. Movement mechanics are movement mechanics. Right? It's all the same muscles. They all work the same way. It's just how do we challenge them? Right? Just because your modality is not my modality doesn't mean we can't help each other out. Tuesdays, for the most part, Paul and I are trying to get back into our rhythm on Tuesday nights. Right? Tuesday night, I kind of think of it as more of a lecture kind of a thing, a college lecture. Thursdays, I think of more of like a lab practical. And so Tuesdays, we talk concepts more so, get into some nitty gritty. This last Tuesday, we were talking about a cue of shoulders back and down. And there's a video we came across that said that was the worst cue ever, and it's so bad, and it causes all kinds of issues. Well, would you happen to think that maybe it's not the cue's problem? Maybe it's not the cue. Maybe it's you. And so again, cues are, again, just things to communicate ideas and concepts with. If you're finding you're having troubles with certain cues, let me know. We'll help you out. In any event, thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for hanging out. I hope you got a little bit of something from my ramblings this morning. I'm going to get myself another cup of coffee and then hang out with my wife because I think she's off today. And otherwise, as always, y'all, stay mindful as fuck. And don't compensate. We're going to see if we can't find somebody to raid. You know, because that's the nice thing to do, I hear. Bring this one over here. If anybody's got a recommendation, feel free. Let me know. We'll see if we can't raid them. We've been raiding this guy, Running Dan. Running and running, running and running. Again, if you got someone you want to recommend, let me know. Raid. I think he's about to leave. Oh no, he's just starting. We'll raid old Celsi. Celsi is an excellent guy. If you're ever looking for someone to follow along for a good workout, Celsi, he's a good one. Very consistent with his workouts, and just a great, fun guy to hang out with. So without further ado, until next time, y'all, again, stay mindful and don't compensate. Oh, I can't raid Celsi. Well then, we're just gonna end the show. That's it for tonight, y'all. Y'all be well. Take care.